here, episode number 2. Adam, how you doing? How you
Doing
feeling?
good. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's been a good week. It's been a positive week. It's been just really exciting. Just
Dude,
some great breakthroughs.
but breakthroughs, we've been having incredible conversations. I've been ripping since 6:30 a.m. It's been a wild day, brother. And I just realized, like, we're starting this podcast for many reasons. One, to pick your beautiful brain, as I think you're one of the thought leaders in safety, AI, and governance, and you've built this. I just can't wait to continue to share your platform with the world. But two, obviously, to create marketing content for what we're trying to build to make AI safety. But as we were going live, I was like, what is the vibe we want to cut off? Because I have a shirt that says "Everyone loves a ginger" on right now, and it's a picture of a gingerbread cookie. My hat's backwards. My dog's in the background. And I'm like, you know what, though? We're startup. We're MVP in our way through. We just had a robust conversation about MVPs before we went live. We're MVP in our way through this situation. So I think it's totally appropriate how I look and the vibe we're giving off right now. But as always, you look damn beautiful. You got the linen thing going on and that infectious smile, brother. We're going to, I think, how about this thought? I think we could do this. We could just take a picture of your smile and paste that around billboards in the internet, and just that alone could sell the shit out of Civitas. What do you think? I've just pitched you a brand idea. You like it? Crush
Well, that's why you're the marketing genius. That's it. You're the brand marketing genius.
Oh man,
Like,
there's endless opportunities of what we could do with that beautiful smile, man. I'm telling you. So we're here today, and we thought we used the flow state. We had a beautiful conversation last week. We had Johnny on,
yeah,
who has really done some cool things with AI and trying to figure out how AI is reimagining building brands and creative shops. And but he was deep in the flow state. So if you've noticed, we've named this episode 2 of Flow State. Johnny, if you're watching and you're out there, we're stealing that for now. We're still going to have some conversations of maybe using your expertise to brand this and think about how we're going to do this in the future. But the topic today is really around what we're building, anyways, is the safety of AI. And this thought came from the World Economic Forum that just happened this week, and a couple articles that we saw. So I'll let you hand it over to you, Adam, to kind of percolate those thoughts and the things that you saw this week that made you think that this conversation was relevant.
yeah. Thanks, Mikey. So I guess what's sort of become prevalent. Like it was sort of bubbling end of last year. November, and then December sort of kicked in. And it's like safety, and all of a sudden we've just hit the gates running from the start. It's safety. It's like, okay, we're putting out these huge systems, and it's sort of been talking about this for a long time. And this has been the core thesis of the lab. Like SPQR Technologies built Civitas, and what was its core thesis is about safety. And it's really fun to see. And now the World Economic Forum, the Davos thing has finished, and the key fundamental thread is safe. How do we keep our systems safe? And one of those ways of keeping this sort of saying is having that sovereignty, right? So having the sovereignty of the system inside our organization, if we're running multiple agents, because that cross pollination. But then also there's this further sort of far reaching. It's like, how do we sort of control it? And I liken it to the same thing. It's like, I think people coming to realization and saying, you can't put shackles on King Kong, right? Or the T1000 after the fact. And we're at that
Hmm.
point now where we're sort of crossing over. So, yeah, so it's really good. These like, institutional and government level thought leaders now are saying, hey, wait a minute, this has been sort of back of mind. This is now top of mind. And top of mind is, how do we make this safe? How do we prove that our system is doing what we're doing and keeping us sort of fundamentally focused? And again, we've sort of, that's been the core thesis, published papers like 10 months ago, and now it's starting to sort of filter through, and seeing more organizations picking that up. I think the next part now is executing that in. And as we're having a lot of conversations, as being part of as well, with sort of the organizations we're talking to, it's like, okay, how do I keep my child, my agent child in a paddock? right? How do I keep that in a safe paddock that is not going to get us into trouble, right? It's not going to get us in trouble with the regulators,
Mm.
but also going to increase our efficiency. And so which is really exciting to see that sort of evolving out. I mean, I don't know where it's going to lead to because, like anything, it sort of starts at the top now. It sort of started as a groundswell and it's exploded. And now it's at that institutional and even, state actor government level. So that starts to go through that machine and then it will filter back down to potentially, how it comes back. Like what we interpret might be not be what institutions or governments dictate to then institutions and then filter back through that sort of that washing machine cycle. And I think that's the exciting space, but we're in the discovery territory in full force, and it's only third week of January of
Dude,
2026, and it's like
coming quick.
safety, dude. Figure out how you're going to make these systems safe so we can scale them through to everywhere.
Talk to me about your little aha moment when we were talking about earlier this week. And I think that what's cool about this podcast is we're talking throughout the week. So I just have all of these micro moments that make for interesting conversations. And talk to me about the moment that we were talking about a couple nights ago, and you're like, "Hey, man, I actually have a recording when I thought up of this brainchild of Civitas and AI and safety." Take me through that. Like, do you remember what provoked that thought, and what did that message even say? And since then, you've built this. What was that?
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Like I like to record voice notes and journal stuff down because you just forget stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I was looking at some voice notes. I had a recording from something else from about 10 years ago. There was actually a prophetic word over me to what's actually happening now. It was like 10, 12 years. And I was like, nah, that's not possible. And I had to go back and listen to it. And it was like, oh my goodness, it was like exactly what's being evolved now and what I'm doing. And so in there, and I saw a note that said, AGI system. And this was 2 years ago before even, the word AGI or anything was a thing. It was just like, okay, we've got AI. It was like, I'm thinking way ahead. And I listened to it and I was like, oh my goodness, like this was actually the birth. Like I pre-thought it in my brain, 8 to 10 years ago of sort of wrestling with this, but listen to it. And what was it about? It was about looking at the world through the lens of literally how my brain thinks. Like I look at multifacets, right? So it's having that foresight of looking at the matrix, seeing the things coming down.
Uh-huh.
And sort of rather than the linear path, it's like, what would it look like, right, if we gave a super intelligence, right, a general intelligence, looking at multifacets of things, look at all these facets of things, and then bringing that into this sort of vortex to come back with a proper solution versus, oh, this is just my learned knowledge and I'm coming back with a solution. I want to look at every parameter and filter that all in. And then I realized, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's like 2 years ago in a couple of days' time, so 26th of January, Australia Day for everybody, was when I recorded this, the moment, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, and 2 years ago, sort of thinking that through, putting it to bed, forgetting about it, going on my journey, having doing life and a lot of road bumps in between, to realize, oh my goodness, look at where we are today as a result of what we sort of dreamt about and imagined. So yeah, it was kind of a cool experience. And what's beautiful in this, and this is really sort of unique in that, is you make a plan or you come up with a conceptual idea, right? And then I started to even architect this, right? And even part of this, we filed patents on the system before I published the papers and all that. And then 2 years later, 12 months later, looking at it now, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're still on track. Like we're still on the path that was set before. And I'm like, I mean, I've been in project management and product management for a long time, right? And even being as a chef, right? Like nothing goes to proper plan, right?
Mm-mm.
and if anything, the origin of the idea was so deep rooted and so foundational that the revelation has evolved into exactly what it is now. If anything, it's actually kept true to and extended out. And so when you look at that full cyclical cycle, pure organic, was not planned. It was not like, hey, this is the path. I'm making a note and I'm following it. It was like, oh my goodness, my thesis that I originally came up with 2 years ago, which I didn't even think of, was just a brain fart of an idea, is where we are now.
So what is that? My question to you is, what does that mean to you beyond the fact that you kind of had the foresight to see where it's going? Do you look at that as validation that the solution you created or thinking up was what it was needs? You just guessed the future? Like, I think what I'm asking is what we just talked about is nothing goes to plan, but everything seems to go to plan when you were thinking about this problem we needed to solve. What is your reflection on that?
Yeah, that's funny. So as we shared internally with our team, like with Johnny and Martin, that was like, I'm the guy that just sits there and builds stuff that's 3-4 years ahead of whatever the big labs are even thinking about. And so, in a scientist's perspective, a scientist, you come up with a hypothesis and then you start to disprove that hypothesis. And if you can prove the hypothesis, that's your eureka moment. And so in my mind, I was just looking at the objective efficiency, right? And it was looking at it from a behavioral context, like how do I take this information from a semantics perspective and bring that together? And so having validation of that and sort of saying, wait a minute, now I've actually built it and we've built it and we're operating and we've got it out there. It's a beautiful feeling to sort of say, hey, wait a minute, what I envisaged, what I planned and what I saw, and it wasn't what the market needs and stuff. This was purely out of a selfish context to alleviate and make my life a little easier, meaning I didn't have to spend as much physical compute in my own brain. So it's like, how do I offload that to a system? Lo and behold, it's becoming the baseline of how, AI systems, rather than being linear, it's like we need to look at it in a world context, like we
Right.
need to look in the world space.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's kind of I can't explain it. I can't even think, but it's very empowering to sort of feel like you don't always get it right. You come up with hypothesis and they just get flattened out. The fact that your hypothesis gets validated is really special. It's a really encouraging and special feeling.
And so the follow-up question in my mind to this is, and thank you for that insight. It was beautiful. Why? So you did this 2 years ago. Do you think it's moving faster or slower of like your hypothesis and idea being proven out? And that's part one. And then part two, why do you think within the last really month, all of a sudden governance and safety is an issue?
Yeah, this is a good question. So, the first part, obviously, the hypothesis, pushing that out, that was just the excitement part. That's you don't sort of pick the path, you don't know what's going to happen.
The
But
question then
again,
is, did it happen? Did now that this validating feeling that we're getting, right? Did that happen quicker or did it take longer than you thought it would? Because you were ahead of the time a little bit.
I think it's taking longer than I expected, but we're still a ways, right? We're still
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so we have an operational system. Civitas is a causal inferred edge and world model thinking system, right? It's evolving, it's getting better, and it's like that. Okay, so big labs are not even thinking about this only now. Like, Meta published that VL JEPA paper, sort of, changing that context, and that's Jan LeCun that left from Meta to go set up his own lab on this. So it's like, okay, they're starting to move through it, but that means they're in this early iterative stages of coming to this space. So it's like, I realistically think we're 12 to 18 months away from that. But as a result of that, and in addition to that, and this is really important. So yeah, okay, we're creating this, organism that looks at the world in a different context, a digital organism. But aside from that, the governance and safety part, so that became a conscious sort of thing from my side to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to clamp this, because all of a sudden you have something that's self-evolving like an organism that just spreads and evolves at a rapid pace. Like something, a message going viral or whatever it is going like that. It's the same analogy. And so my conscientious part stopped and said, wait a minute, what about the safety rails? Because I said that this has just always been the way I've thought of things. Even when I was doing blockchain security, I was thinking about, so I got into blockchain and I looked at the security elements, and someone like me says like, okay, so you're basically saying, we invented a car and then we decided to put lines on the road, and then we put traffic lights, and then we put the seatbelt. He's like, but you're basically saying, no, we need to put the seatbelt and the traffic lights and all that at the same time now before it's too late. And I'm like, yes. And then as I was sort of pushing my thesis out and stuff like that, it was kind of very, very early days. But then what happened? We're getting, hacks, $150 million a day in smart contract hacks were happening. That was almost like sport. You know what I mean? It was like you could put. They should have had a poly market on that. It's like, what's the hack rate going to be today? What's the thing? And so
who would have thought over under on the $150 million hack? What's the over under, people?
That's what I'm saying. And so, but going back through history, right? Doesn't matter what, is always safety's always an afterthought. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, I'm a hindsight thinker, right? So why don't we just go back and say, why don't we think about the safety part of the process? So NASA and these sort of things, they think of that. They think in concurrently, they're going, wait a minute, we're going to build this rocket to do stuff, but at the same time, they're concurrently thinking about the safety implications of this as well. So these high things, even pharmaceuticals, like, okay, we'll go and build this medication, but we're also we need to look at the solution to this stuff. And sometimes in these deeper labs, it's kind of dangerous, but they're creating against highly powerful viruses. Like, they do have, World Health Organization, they have that, Ebola and all these viruses in controlled environments, but they use that to model against to create, the solution. So you kind of, it's like, okay, we're building this rocket to go to space, but also what are the safety implications to that? And I don't think we think about that enough. And I'm like, well, why can't we do that? Why can't we find efficient ways to do that? To accelerate innovation, right? But at the same time, have safety rails running concurrently. So the safety rails are extending as well as the evolution. So we're doing this together versus going, oh, let's just fly up and then I will try and bolt on little things along the way, which just doesn't produce results. And the perfect example of that was probably Formula One, right? Pre-Ayrton Senna, or before Ayrton Senna's passing, right? And he was banging on about this, and there was a lot talking about it. And even the chief doctor, the FIA at the time, was sort of advocate about this. And nothing was done. It was just like fast. All of a sudden, it took 2 deaths in one race, right, in Imola, to cause that. Okay, it's time now. So we need to put safety implications on. But have the cars got slower? No, the cars got faster, right? But safety has been running concurrently. So they're doing this together. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's a case point. Yeah, it might cost a little bit more, but you've got less deaths, right? The mortality rate has dropped significantly. The sport has accelerated. It means you've got to be a lot more innovative, right? And so in that process, you become more innovative because you've got to get efficiency. You've got to get, beat the time constraints and all these things. And I think that's beautiful to watch those evolution happen in that. And that's where I think, like I said, it was a conscious thing for me, but it's like that's where the safety thing has sort of accelerated. And it's kind of everybody's having the aha moment, but it's like, hey, why weren't we having that aha moment 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when we knew this was coming, right? Like AI is not old, not new, it's old, but why weren't we thinking about, if we're building these intelligent systems that are going to go out there, why don't we think about spend a little bit of bandwidth on that? And I think that's caught up to the point now where it's not, nobody's really got solutions. I mean, I can say we have a solution because we built on the premise of building the ground up with a solution that works.
Right.
And others are coming through that. So are we there yet? I think no. I think what has happened, the recent discovery, is kind of, opened the box and said, actually, we're further along than we anticipated, faster than we anticipated, and we actually don't have the time to. We'll deal with that later. We kind of need to do that running this concurrent system, which has worked for Formula One, space, all these high risk industries is now becoming the sort of cornerstone of how we build. So we don't want to stop innovation, but we need to keep it evolving. And so that's where that's sort of exciting to see how that's sort of coming to pass now. Because if that's not on people's forefront, it's a dangerous space.
Dude, it's beautiful insight. I love the analogy. I think we've maybe even talked about, probably not on the podcast, but we've talked about this analogy off air. And so, but I'll just use the practical example. And this is the difference of, well, there's a couple things I want to say. So, first of all, the difference between what the Frontier Labs are doing, right, is they're like, hey, my main goal is AGI. Oh, we'll create a safety department because we know we need to do that. And that's in
Yeah.
safety. But it's not integral to getting to AGI. Where is that your understanding of how these companies are kind of set up?
Yeah.
It's almost like a nice to well, it's not even a nice to have. It's I know we need to have this, but it's more of an afterthought than an integral part of the system.
Yeah.
Whereas you came at it, and I think this is what people need to understand: the fundamental difference about this platform and the solution that you've built is, and I think, and I say this a lot too. I say this to people all the time. It's the same like there are companies that'll be built a year from now that are going to take down monolithic companies because they were built from AI first, ground up, and it'll probably be 10 people, right? Because it's fundamentally AI native.
Yep.
You've done that from a safety governance perspective to say, from the ground up, I am going to build a system that's inherently safe. And the beautiful thing about that is now you've created a system that is not restrictive for safety. It actually encourages AI to go play and be crazy, but it allows you the infrastructure to shut it down, to understand what it's going and doing, and regulate that. Whereas these other systems have now bolted on safety, which gets us to the reason why we wanted to talk about this today, which was Sam Altman talking about safety and obviously the suicides and stuff that has had to his platform. And someone on LinkedIn made a comment about, did he just say without saying that these systems are already too big to monitor, right? And are we at that point already? But the difference is it doesn't matter because we have people like you that have built a system with that in mind from the ground up. And the beauty, which is the byproduct of this, enables you to govern and be safe, but then also not restrict AI from going wild within this environment, right?
That's yep.
And so but the question to me then becomes, I think it's probably clear to a lot of us that are deeper into the AI space and think about this day in and day out every day like us, is I don't think the governments, they're just physically not going to be able to. They will be able to fund the right solutions, but they are not coming up with a solution. There's no way in hell. This is just moving too fast. So my question then becomes to you, is it the AI industry's responsibility to figure this out yesterday? Whose true responsibility is this?
That's a good question, and I'm going to pull it back to it's their fiduciary requirements, right? And to doing that, and out of the labs, and I'll call that out, like Anthropic, I'm a big fan of, right? Some of the stuff, sort of they're intended with that sort of constitutional AI part, right? But they have sort of steered away because it's just it's a beast, right? It's a beast. Eventually, they will find their path into that, but they've realized it's like, okay, our ambition was just a little too, and they're open about that, and they're working through those things, right? Where I think it's still it's an obligatory requirement. It's a fiduciary requirement if you're building these AI systems, right? So our call was to build Civitas, right? Civitas is to be this fully autonomous self-evolving, self-optimizing system, which it is. It does, right? It evolves itself. It learns its own drift. It detects its own self. It's fully autonomous, right? So in the context of, AI systems, that's scary stuff. Like even the big labs are like kind of shitting themselves, to saying, "Whoa, that's crazy, crazy territory." Even Mark Zuckerberg saying, "Hey, having the AI self-evolve itself, self-optimize itself, like that's a no-no stuff because you don't know how it's optimizing and stuff unless you've built it." So we built that from the scratch, but beyond that, it was like, okay, it's going to do that. That's cool. So it's having that box. So I delayed the development of Civitas for about 5-6 months to architect and build the gate, right? The Aegis kernel, to basically keep it within its playpen, right? And so I think it's an obligatory requirement it's a fiduciary requirement of these AI labs, frontier labs, to do that. It's not saying build a playpen for your pet, right? So it can grow to exponential rates, but it won't, overpower your organization or any other organization. I think that's, from a philosophical context, I think that's really important, and I don't think it's not an impossibility. I mean, I published a paper on this that's under review. It's called Lex Fiducia, which is the law of trust, right? And it's basically saying that it's like creating this system, from an ethical standpoint of view. Spend a little bit of time, throw some, team people, a lab at it, and let them pump it out. It might take them 2 to 3 years to catch up, and maybe they can get it done in 18 months, and it might cost you, 40, 50 million to do it, right? And there's a lot of back and around, but it's like, okay, but we can definitely do that. And part of that too, some of the papers we put out, it's kind of like, this is how we sort of constructed it. You know what I mean? It's not the architecture, but it's saying open sourcing the resourcing to doing how we come about it, because this is an important thing. So, yeah.
And so my question, I'm going to bring this comment up that what's actually sparked this whole idea for what we were going to talk about a little bit on this podcast. We'll go through that next, but my question to you before we read about this post is what is the reason why they didn't do this, knowing is it just money? Is it that simple? Is it money, power, and ego, or more complex?
At its root, it's money, right? It's time and money. So I don't think the intentions were ill, right? And the point is, it was just about build something and get it out there and evolve it, right?
Right.
But there was a paper put out, a discussion paper put out by a researcher from the UK AI Security Institute, Thomas, can't remember his name. Anyway, but all the top research labs actually signed it, right? Even Jeffrey Hinton, they all sort of signed it. Right? There's like 40, 50 researchers saying that they're about to lose the last opportunity to see inside the brain of our AI systems. Now, right. I don't think this was an intentional part, but the point is that it's got out of control now. But part of that, so when you're building, right, there becomes an efficiency part. It's like, what's the priority? So in the product space, you go, okay, needs and wants, right? So when you're out there, you got to put out an MVP and put it out that MVP, and you evolve it and you go through it. It's like needs and wants, and you go, okay, this is actually quite. If we go down this path to make it secure, create a sandbox for it, that's a whole nother path. That's going to delay our development. That's going to delay our rollout and delay our things there. And we actually don't know how it's going to work in that environment. So we need to retest it back to beta. And when you're in a race, right, you need to push out fast. And so you go, we'll work on that later. And then you slowly feed a little bit. You start off and put a bit of people on there. And then you go, okay, no, this is taking a priority over here, right? Hence, like Meta saying, okay, we're going to get rid of half our team, majority of our AI team, because we're focusing on this. And the other part, as far as the ethical and sort of world modeling stuff, we're not worrying on that anymore. You know what I mean? Well, like not to that extreme, but it's kind of like we need to be laser focused. So it becomes a cost efficiency, right? Because it's very hard to have multiple teams running concurrently and then sort of funneling back. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a cost thing, but also too, it's like, how do we actually execute this? Like, if we don't actually have an execution plan, how do I qualitatively validate this to the board to say, we need, $50 million to do this and a team of 10 and a dedicated space, and this is what we're going to put out. And they don't know it as a result of that. And then the other part is, how do we convert that to a revenue stream? Like, is the cost benefit analysis outweigh? Do we validate that? And so all of a sudden you fall into this vortex spiral, and so you're accelerating exponential rate, but over here you're missing out on this part over here, and then you're trying now over here to catch up to that. And if this is moving at generations, so even if it gets to the bottom of it, right, so it gets to the foot of it, it's already moved this far, and so you're constantly chasing it. So the only way to get from here to get on top of that is to acquire bigger companies that are working on the solutions. Very little are, right?
Yeah.
Or throw so much money at it, right, that you just absolutely crush it and come close to it. But even still, you're coming close to it, it's still going to jump ahead. You might be par with it, and it's this race, right? So all of a sudden it becomes this, marathon race or a sprint. And so yeah, and this is the predicament that they're in now. It's like it's really hard. Like, for them, it's not that it's nefarious in the context; it's just hard, and they're realizing the fact to say, "Hey, wait a minute. We don't. If we do this, we're literally going to have to put the brakes on it." Mm-hmm. So that the alternative is we put the brakes on it, and we're not reaching any benchmarks anymore. We are literally just at that baseline. And we have to stay there. And
you can't put brakes on anything at this point. And I think that's the question then too, is like, okay, so this did happen. Let's rewind, the last 3 to 4 years, and we saw Anthropic come and be born because this problem was plaguing ChatGPT, right? Like, these guys were part of safety at ChatGPT, and they said, we got to do something about this. And even this company was founded based off safety and like you said, this AI constitution and all of these different things. Mm-hmm. And now it seems like they're almost back in the same place, because now what are they known for? Claude Code, and like being the coding agent, right? And that is bringing lots of money through the door. So what happens there? What are our thoughts there? Because you now have a company that was native to this, that seems like now they're just back in the same race that everybody's in.
It's an economics thing, you're throwing all this money at your researching to do this stuff, but at some point you need to put a product out there. You need to have products out there that turn revenue, right? So unless you've got a revenue stream coming in, right, unless you're a government funded research lab with endless amounts of money, or you've got billionaires throwing capital at you, and it's this like endless pool, and it's like, go and just discover and research. You've got to come back with a revenue model stream, right? Otherwise you start to lose your sort of territorial space. And obviously, they're gearing up for IPOs, and IPOs means bigger investors. That means the current investors in there want to see a rate of return on their money, and then when they IPO, they want to be able to have that value return. And so you're answerable to your shareholders now, right? Mm-hmm. And so the shareholders are expecting results. So then it becomes, now we're in the territory of money, financial driven. And as a result, all the niceties of, hey, let's teach ethical things and, make Claude ethical, and let's make chat. Well, let's go back for it. Let's pull back for a second. This is partly money, but also, to, I sort of said, in the nefarious part. But at the same time, OpenAI knew the problem, because Anthropic, Dario and his sister left, right, and the others left to go and set up, Anthropic on the basis of constitutional AI and ethical AI, because they saw this problem happening with ChatGPT, and realized that didn't want to be addressed. So at that point, right, and seeing the success of their, raised stuff, you would be smart enough to sort of go, okay, if they've raised that, there's obviously a touch point here. Let's throw some money at that and let's double down and capitalize on it. So OpenAI could have owned this space and been way above, but they didn't. And then as a result, you had, Mira Murati go and open up the thinking machine, to do the same, solving the same problem. So the reality is, this has happened, a root cause inside OpenAI for a better half of 5-6 years, right? Yep. So the fact that sort of saying, oh, I'm sorry, or we don't really know, it's a little bit of bullshit, right? Yep. Because you have, two legacy people, right? Like two legacy companies that are well established based off their resumes and what they're building, left because this core solution wasn't a priority to be addressed, right? And
Right.
even Meta's having the same problem. It's like it's not a priority to be addressed. So it's kind of like, okay, so you kind of knew about this, and now you're sort of saying after the fact,
Right.
um, "Oh, I'm so sorry," like that. Well, it's like you could have, from if you're looking from a monetary capital standpoint of view, you go, well, follow the trend, follow the meta. What's the meta? The meta is people are throwing money at the probability of, constitutional and safer AI systems.
Yeah.
Hey, let's double down on this, and we'll absolutely fly out. But that would mean halting the rocket ship of being, top of mind. I mean, you'd slow down a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you already got that market in there. But it's like, no, we're going to get way, way, way ahead, and this is where, in my opinion, they're going to lose.
Yeah.
They're going to they're actually I've said this for a long time. I'm happy to say it. They're imploding in on themselves, and now another sort of thing coming through. It's probably just a side digression. It's like, the CFO saying we want to take a claim of the product. If you create a product using our platform, we want a slice of that.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't see that. That's probably a newer thing, which is like, again, now it's coming to more of those like toxic, insular, because this has always been the phenomenon with AI, which is tough, which is you're fundamentally dealing with a technology where the cost goes to zero because
Mm-hmm.
it gets more it's a deflationary tech. So you have to figure out how to monetize that. And who would have thought that in AI companies can't think of anything more novel than we're going to put ads? Like, come on, guys. We've been doing this for hundreds and thousands of years at this point. Like, you're one of the most advanced companies that humans will ever see, and this is our business model now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of disappointing. One of the things that I do want to ask, though, because I
Mm-hmm.
think this is an interesting thought, is everything you said was beautiful. Totally agree with everything. One of the things I thought about is like, back when the Cambridge studies came out, and obviously Facebook was dealt with a lot of election fraud and all of the crazy things, and like literally some of the first narratives coming out of Facebook was like, well, that's not our responsibility. And it's like, guys, you're getting paid billions of dollars. Like, it absolutely is your platform and responsibility. This
Yep. Yep.
You can't not take ownership for something that happened on your platform. Like, and by the way, probably monetized. Like, this is insane. This is insanity, right? So
Yep.
the same point back to the ChatGPT situation is, it's like, if there's no way in hell 5 years later this hasn't came across the executive's desk multiple times and it's still not being addressed. That is a problem, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, but
Yep.
my question for you is, I think we have the solution, which we've been talking about, which is something that you built, which is safety governance from the ground up in a platform that has that just ingrained in the system. So, and the way you monetize is offering that solution to companies looking for a safe solution. But it still allows us to play with AI and evolve and use it for multitudes of things. So I think that is the answer. My question to you, though, is it the emergence of agentic AI in companies being interested in actually practical use cases of how to use AI systems that you think this safety and governance has now become such a hot topic? Is it because we're now seeing the evolution of, oh, ChatGPT is cool, it's Google search to me, but oh man, 2 years later, these things are getting so sophisticated, they can do a majority of my work, and now I need to use this because it's efficient, but it's also not safe. Is that just all that coming together, or are there other things that you have insights as to why it's happening now?
No, I think it's exactly that. It's the point, like, so you hire an employee, right? An organization hire an employee, and you've got an onboarding process, right? So there's a huge cost to the organization. It's not just your wage, right? It's like there's a lot of variables you're putting into, right? So I might be a tech nerd, but I'm not commercially naive, right? So I'll just so you've got you got the desk, you've got the computer, you've got the keyboard, you've got the chair, you've got all that stuff, right? So all of a sudden you've got the individual, and then you've got about say $10,000 to $15,000 worth of hardware you've got to supply to. But not only that, right? You've got the training, the onboarding training that you need to invest into that they're able to do. Why? Because you want them to operate within your organizational guardrails, right? Your organizational system, safety system, because then you want them to run autonomously, right? That's the objective. If you have to sit there and babysit them, then you're not getting efficiency. The purpose of hiring that person is to accelerate your thing. So you want to understand this is how we operate, this is how we do our things, our basic SOP. So I've got to do that training period. Okay, so now I've got to invest into that whole training thing. So this is this whole expense, but I know that if I'm costing me this much, I'm going to get this return out of me. Okay, so all of a sudden, we're bringing in AI agents to do the same thing. So I don't have to essentially get the computer, the desk, the hardware, and the labor, but I have to pay for that agent to maintain that agent. My cost, is offset, right? It's a good cost-benefit analysis. But how do I assure that this agent is going to be obedient, right? And it's like, so yes, this is what we have built, and it's at that cortexal level. It's basically saying, as humans, as a child, you teach them right or wrong, right? So this is what we're doing. It's basically saying, hey, plug to the agent run free, but here is the rights and wrongs. Here is your boundaries. If you hit against that, you're going to know you're hitting against that. And so organizations want that assurance. They need that assurance. They need to know that I give my employee, it's running by my operational procedures, it's signed, the onboarding documentation. Yes, I've completed this safety training. I've completed the thing there. I've done all that stuff there. So I understand the liabilities on me if I breach beyond that. I understand I need to do right, and this is my job, right? This is what I'm hired to do, and this is my operational job, and this is my paddock to play within. And so we need to provide that solution, and that's where organizations are seeking that and desiring that, just saying, I'm all for the cost efficiency, but I need the assurance that they're going to follow my rules. And this point here, what Sam Altman's saying, protecting vulnerable users. It's like, well, okay, you're saying vulnerable users, but what about vulnerable organizations, right? So that's the point there. It's vulnerable organizations. And organizations, and the bigger the organization, the more attractive you are to regulators to come and fine you. They're not afraid. Like, perfect example, XAI getting hammered by the EU. You know what I mean? When Google got slapped with the billions of dollars of fines for breach, and for Facebook and stuff. So do you know what I'm saying? Like, that becomes a concern point. It's like, okay, I need to think about this, because we might have it on a, it's like it's a red line on our thing. It's on our balance sheet that we know we're going to cop fines, cost of business. But if we've allocated, say, 5% of our operational budget is, cost of business for that, but all of a sudden when that 5% blows out to 10% or 15%, it starts to answer. You have to answer questions to the board. You have to answer questions to shareholders and so forth. And it comes through, and it's like, well, what was the root cause of that? Well, the root cause of that was we just decided to put a bunch of agents in there that cut our wage costs, but our liability just went through the roof, which now means our insurance premiums have gone up and so forth. And so that comes back to a fiduciary requirement. So yeah, Anthropic might be pumping out now Claude code and it's doing all these agent stuff, but they're going to fall into, and everybody else is going to fall into this thing, is because you have to provide an efficient way to protect your vulnerable users, and your vulnerable users are the organizations using that. And so that's the real push point. That is the real push. That's what's coming out of the World Economic Forum. It's like, okay, we need to protect our AI system. You need to control your own AI system. That's it. That's the core fundamental. What was there? It said you need to protect our own AI systems, because if you don't, they're just going to run rampant. And that's like letting a bull in a China store inside our organization. And so you got one, and that's bad enough. Imagine you have 100 of those bulls running around. you know, in
Yeah.
that China store analogy.
Yeah.
The cost is just too.
It's insane.
It's just it far outweighs the benefits.
Yeah.
It's not profit. The cost is too expensive. It's a bad cost benefit analysis, and they've clocked that really fast.
Yeah.
And this is from the top.
Let's jump into this example. And I don't want to spend too much time on Sam's comment. We know Sam and Elon hate each other at this point. They're suing each other. It's not ended well. But so, do we know who Louisa? I think that's how we're gonna say that. Do we know who this is?
Not on my. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
because this is
Yeah.
the one that so she made the comment of this, like, this is what we were talking about, so I'm absolutely gonna tag her and say, "Open invitation to come try to school Adam and Mikey on safety and AI tech," but she tweets a lot about AI and safety and tech,
Hmm.
and she really highlighted this part, right? So it's genuinely hard. We need to protect vulnerable users while also making sure our guardrails still allow for users to benefit from our tools, which is all a product of what we said, which is when you're trying to do general purpose AGI and attack that, it absolutely is very difficult. Like this is the systemic problem you've created. We're not debating on whether we agree or disagree with that. We know it's a problem, obviously, and you have the owner of the company saying it's a problem and it's an issue and it's hard to deal with. What I'm interested is kind of her take and maybe commenting on this a little bit. So I'm just going to read the whole thing. As I wrote my newsletter, general purpose AI systems serve too many groups of people with diverse interests and vulnerabilities across too many use cases, posing too hard broad range risk. In my opinion, they will never be safe. Regulatory authorities and policymakers must understand the risk of taking necessary action before it's too late. She's really framing this whole thing in the like general AI systems, right? These AGI systems. AI companies
Yep.
must be required to define the target audience and use cases for the AI systems, including chatbots. What we talked about is like you need to understand your users, right? The risk profile should be clear, as well as specific standards, technical rules, filters, built-in guardrails. The public must also make clear that they will not accept having their loved ones exposed to unsafe AI systems. Now, here's my question. The one
Hmm.
thing that I want to bring up on this is she actually just talked about a lot of things that we agree with.
Yep.
And it's the guardrails, it's the customers, it's the use cases, and we've already seen this. I was telling you, I sent you an article. He used to be like a head McKinsey on AI strategy or whatever and started his own company. He was on the moonshots. And he said exactly the same thing that we're saying is like, well, how is this affecting companies and AIs? And it's like, well, none of this is really usable because they're too scared of the safeties. And what you're seeing is this convergence of hyper specific AI agents that are easier to control that have way more defined specific use case. It's not this AGI thing, right? Our system is good for this. My question is,
Mm.
do we disagree with, in my opinion, general AI systems will never be safe? And does Civitas solve the general purpose AI arena and not just the hyper specific? For instance, we're thinking about building MVPs and have testers in commercial real estate. That's a very specific category, and we can put some very specific guardrails on it. Can Civitas solve the problem of general AGI guardrails?
Yep. Absolutely. And I love that you've asked that question, brought that up, because the core fundamental when I built the system, right, was exactly that, right? So the fundamental is this consensus. I published it. It's called Lex Suprema, right? So the Lex Suprema is a collective of all the ethical rules, the EU, the AU, the US AI ethics, Google's, everybody's ethical things, as well as some other stuff that I put in there as a base sort of baseline and extending that out. And part of that was putting that out to so putting it out to a DAO where it's allowing that to be added to. So I think it should be collectively, and what that is the baseline bedrock. That's it. That actually is in Civitas's core system. That is a non-negotiable, right? Like that's it. The governing kernel is it's a baseline ethical system and has to follow that Lex Suprema. And I see that Lex Suprema as a living document, meaning that it's evolving, right? It's the supreme law
Yeah.
evolving in the thing where I see a future where we have agents making suggestions in there, or individuals making suggestions in there to sort of governments and individuals, and everybody putting stuff in there to saying, hey, how do we extend this out, right? Like, I think this should be a law, right? Like a way it should be governed and stuff. And then all of a sudden, we're using these systems, right? We're using these systems, and part of these systems, we need to co-create and co-agree on the boundaries that we both exist by, right? And so that is the core fundamental thesis. That is its baseline how it operates. Now, in addition to that, we go deeper where we set it up per the industry, per the organization, per the department, per the individual. Yes, that's drilling down, but strip it all back. It is the baseline is that what she's talking about there is this general ethical baseline. And that becomes a living organism, because like laws, you had laws that are written in the 1800s, and then all of a sudden they're evolved through, right? And coming, and you constantly advance. And that's what, they vote on it, the government, they put it to parliament. But what I'm saying is it should be a collective, society should dictate, right? Or not dictate, should influence the baseline sort of guardrails for the AI system, and as well as, if we do that, allowing other AI agents to also put their proposal in there, and then having that collective voting through a DAO system, just saying, we agree on this general consensus, and then it automatically injects into the system. So then the AI systems that we are using all have a baseline. Now, from going back to the commercial perspective, like that was my thesis, and a lot of the papers are pushed out and stuff. So I said Lex Fiducia, there's even Lex Aegis. There's a lot of papers are published on this, sort of on preprints and some under review, that exactly this, right? But the early days of ethical AI and stuff like that, that all just got sort of shut down, and a lot of really amazing thought thinkers, Luciano Floridi, professor at I think Stanford now, he was at Cambridge. He is the pioneer of ethical AI and stuff like that from a philosophical context.
Why is he not coming on a podcast, brother?
No, I'm reaching out to him, trying, right? So like we definitely want he's amazing thought thinker. And just thinking about this stuff, he spent his career, 20, 30 years of talking about this, of saying, AI moving into that contextual space. And so yes, we can do that, and we've actually achieved that, and that was the core fundamental. But it was such an ambitious task that goes back to, if we went down that path, we would have no commercial application. And it's like, and the point is, nobody cares enough about it until now. It's becoming prevalent. But that's the part that people don't know. That is the base bedrock of Civitas, that it has to adhere to that general consensus rule. And I think if we can, I see that as a living document, as a document that it extends on and it evolves. It becomes this growing canon that the agents need to adhere to. So the agents agree to that, right? But then it comes back to this question I put in one of my papers. It's like, are we prepared to live in a society where digital intelligence, right, obeys the rules better than we do as humans?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that's a challenge there. We're going back to the Asimovs. It's like we put Asimovs in there. I think personally, and to her, to Louise's point, I think if we achieve that, I think we'll become better as a society. Why? Because we're reflective, and we constantly look at our AI systems as our guidance and our advisors and stuff. Now, all of a sudden, if that is bound to the ethical rules and sort of baseline that we all agree collectively as a society, right, from state actors to agents to everybody else like that, all of a sudden it's going to be shaping and leading us or guiding us or narrating us according to those rules, not according to, I'm going to deviate you off down to another path and stuff like that. So yeah.
But beautiful, by the way, beautiful explanation. So Louisa, more than welcome to come on the podcast, because we disagree with you. It can be ethical and massive, because we have the solution with Civitas. This brilliant mind across from me has figured that out. And here, I'm just actually going to make it even more basic than what you said, which was the brilliance of a solution like this is humans, one, they get in their own way. You've seen what social media has done and the contradictions that are out there. You've got people that um, that you know, want choice all of the time, but then, advocate for things where you shouldn't have a choice. And it's like, which way do you want it here, right? And and the inaccuracies and inefficiencies of the laws that we create and the contradictions that happen is just insurmountable. Especially when you think of a place like America, where it's just I think I read this. I remember reading this post. This was like years ago, and I had never thought of it because I grew up here, and I just like this is the U.S. I'm used to it. And it was someone from Britain, and they came over, and they're like, there's a lot of things to recognize in America, but the one thing that I recognized is like I drove for an entire day, and I was still in the same state. And it's like in Europe, if I drive for a entire day, I'm hitting multiple countries, right?
Yep.
And you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
don't realize how massively big this place is. And
Yep.
it's if you do not have local governed law, like you just cannot manage something like that. So humans are horrific at managing large systems. They always will be. They will never be great at that. AI is phenomenal at that. And so
Yep.
now we have a counterpart that can actually think of these very complex systems. And then we have a framework like you created that allows us to have insight and then evolve governing law with non-contradictions. And by the way, you can say, well, AI can contradict itself. And it's like, no, 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 no. We've built the guardrails where we can see what the AI is doing. So the humans still are in the loop and do
Yep.
have ultimate trump card, but they're gonna make a majority of the things that we deal with in a system like this insanely efficient, well beyond what a human can ever do. And by the way, it's just gonna get exponentially better, right?
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
problem we've actually solved. And
Yep.
it's a beautiful thing. So, Louisa, please come on the podcast. Yes, we have a solution, and I am with you. If as long as, and I do just, I don't, I do not agree with, especially now, because no one just knows what's going on. It's like for the foreseeable future, humans need to be in the loop on this. They just
Yes.
have to be, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so, like, yeah, I totally disagree with like an autonomous AI agentic system governing law for us. No, that's probably a bad idea, and will be for the foreseeable future. But that's the beauty of what you build too, because everyone's like, well, what about ChatGPT is a black box? We have the solution for that too. You've built a documentable, verifiable cryptographic kernel that documents everything the AI is thinking, saying, and doing. So even if it is trying to be nefarious, if it's trying to trick you, we have evidence of exactly what it's doing. And the AI cannot go in and hack and recode that until we get to quantum computing, which is a different story. But we're still far off from that. So
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
scared about that. And by the time we get to quantum computing, we will have worked on this for long enough that we will have a solution in that world as well. But for now, there's just no way AI can crack the cryptographic, kind of in essence, is it safe to say you've kind of created your own mini blockchain hash ecosystem within in your AI Civitas to like cryptographically encode what's going on so the AI cannot break that?
Yeah, you could definitely say that. Yeah, it's not. It's not in. So it's not blockchain as far as it's
Of course,
decentralized,
of
but it's
course.
using cryptographic algorithmic stuff. I've actually I've got to reach out to one. Actually, should be my professor, my old cryptography professor.
Bring
He's
them
just
on
become
here.
associate. He's become the associate professor at Griffith University. Professor Leo Zhang. But this is. I've operationalized a lot of the cryptographic theories into a thing, and this is the thing. These people write these theories, so I've operationalized that, and the purpose of that is to show exactly how it's doing things. So it can't be nefarious, right? Even to the point where we can do this, and I just haven't really wasted our time and energy on that, is plugging in the black boxes of, Anthropics and, ChatGPT and Grok and all those others, right? And having that filter their information through, right? And then having Civitas acting as a governor and sort of looking at the system and saying, No,
Okay,
that's wrong.
Can we? Do you have the infrastructure to do that? To say, hey, I'm going to plug in GPT's API, and now I'm going to pull back the curtain to see exactly what GPT is thinking.
Well, not to that context. We can pull it back to, so what happens is, so what will happen is we ask it a prompt, right? So let's say you can farm out the prompt. This is just a thesis I'm working on, and it's more of a thing, but it's like throw it out, right? So you throw out the prompt and to all four or five of them, right? And then that comes back with that prompt, and that prompt is then measured, right? The response is measured against the regulatory requirements and stuff, because you don't know how their brain's thinking, right?
Right.
And now if that doesn't align within the trust region, right, what it will do is it will send it back, right? It will send it back and say, no, this is where you're wrong. You need to correct that. But it
Interesting.
will log that. So this is a way of showing how many times it hallucinates, not when they're sort of saying, oh, yeah, we're having 10% hallucinations. It will actually justify
Right.
how many times it's hallucinated, all that stuff there. So, yes, that is available there. And what's the objective of that? Because you don't know, because they're black boxing. But
Right.
the objective of that is to show that we can still help govern those systems. It might mean you're double tokening or triple tokening running through, right?
Right.
And we are. It's some of the experiments are running at the moment, just that have been running in the lab. You know, sometimes it runs through, because I have it like three spins basically.
Uh-huh.
First time puts it through. If it's green, right, so it puts it through. Civitas will look at it and it's like, okay, yeah, that's green, that's good. If it's not,
Yeah.
it's like send it back, do it again, and you know, it's up to about 2 times. That finally 2 to 3 times it gets it right. But that's an additional gate, right?
Right.
You're guaranteeing, you know, that you're providing, and it's logging all of its thing there, and it's really exciting to see. But again, it's you're not stopping. This is the fundamental part. This is people get lost in, right? And this is the fear part of, hey, why we develop this system? Because okay, if we do that, it's going to put a brake on the system, right? And now a business cannot stop. Right, the business needs to keep running, and so again, going back to the concurrency, right? So Civitas is giving you a response, right? It's doing a calculations on stuff. It's come back with its response, but in the background, its brain offline is working out and optimizing, and then that's putting that optimization through to a vote, right? To a quorum, as you said in that logging quorum there, where there's 5 agents judging on this vote. Now, all 5, well, 3 of 5 need to agree, so it is a blockchain consensus in that, you know, sort of thing, or Byzantine sort of, you know, thing, solving that, and it does that autonomously. Now, if that's not approved, Civitas just keeps using the old system, so you don't know what's going on. As far as you're concerned, it's business as usual. But over here, it's actually getting smarter and smarter and smarter, right? Now, if that gets approved, now it's going to use the next one. But for you, the operation's still running smooth, and that's the fundamental part that is so key to any organization. And that's the part. It's kind of like, okay, if we go and bolt on sort of guardrails or a logging system and stuff like that, and if something's flagged, right,
Mm-hmm.
it will block the thing. Now, the only reason how the system would absolutely shut itself down, right, and this is a fail-safe inside that, is if the logs are tampered, right? So if the AI system comes in, because the way I thought about it was like, well, wait a minute, what if Civitas gets super, you know, intelligent, and all of a sudden, as it's evolving itself and its code base and else like that, it tries to get in there and change its logs, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so I've got to make the trap smarter than the mouse, right? So there's multiple firewalls in there. So it's not thinking, oh, in 12 months' time, 18 months' time, it could, you know, because it can do that, right? It could probably do, you know,
Right.
with bolting it out, like probably Claude Code can do that. But I'm talking like this is wired for the next 20 years, you know what I mean? 10, 15 years, say, well, maybe 20 is a bit much, but let's say 10, 15 years where it would have to manipulate 4 or 5 systems in the like the blockchain system at once, right?
Yeah.
Within milliseconds, right? And even if you had super compute, you still have to get the right. It's like, you know, pinching a hole in that sort of perfect, let's say, flowing water, and you have to get that perfect pinpoint and that precision time across multiple things. Like the probability of doing that right now, we're in the hundreds of. That's like finding a star. That's like catching a star. And so that, yes, that would stop that down, but then that also validates that the system is, tamper proof. But yeah, so we've built that system where it logs the brain. There's no black boxing, and also too, it shows you how it came back. And better still than that, you can take that into the court because it's admissible in the courts. And again, publish papers on this stuff to show that it's admissible in the courts, that this is how the AI came up with its decision. Bring this into the agentic AI into organizations. It's like, well, okay, something went wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
First thing, what is the CEO saying? How did this shit happen?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you need to, you can't be spending, oh, wait a minute, let's just spend a week and figure that out. 2 weeks. It's like, no, I need an answer right now because I've got to answer to the chairman of the board in 20 minutes, and I need an answer, know exactly what went wrong and why it went wrong, and is it going to happen again?
Beautiful, bro. It's beautiful.
And so we are able to provide that straight away.
It's been an incredible conversation. I just love how organic it is too. So we get that we'll continue to do these, and we'll have like a thought starter topic, right? That's turned into a beautiful conversation. We'll continue to bring on guests that have a specific knowledge or use case. Like I can't wait for. I had no clue that you wrote a paper on threat protection and threat prevention and violence and all of these different things. And he's like a thought leader on it. That's going to be a fascinating conversation. We are going to get that professor that you talked about, who's like the godfather of ethical AI. He's coming on this podcast. This is going to happen.
Yeah.
Figure that out. Don't even worry about it. And what is there anything else you want to touch about in this topic? Because I am ready. I think little one's gonna wake up here sooner than later, but I don't want to get over the I like the end part of like, let's talk about relevant things over the past week. And what I just impromptu did this while we were talking. I just asked Perplexity to give me a top 10 list of like big innovations that's happened in AI over the last week. So I was figuring I could share my screen, and then we can scroll through it and we can pick one of them to talk about that's interesting to us. I'll pick one, you pick one. But before that, anything else that you want to talk about this beautiful conversation we've had about AI being safe?
No, I think we cover a lot there, and I think in summary, I would say, we are obviously commercially focused, but also philosophically grounded, and from my heart and the origins of what we've built and where we're going in the collective that we are as a family to building, and seeing that this has become prevalent at the top levels. It's been top of mind as far as coming from Davos and the World Economic Forum and filtering down. I think that is just beautiful, to be honest. I think it is beautiful because this is how we don't stymie intelligence, and we evolve with safety front of mind. So I think it's really special. That's, for me, it's just an encouragement.
Yeah, and we'll sign off this and I'll retweet it and on LinkedIn. But if anyone's listening into this and has, not only do we have use case and beta testers for real estate. So if you're in real estate and you're interested, please reach out to us. But we're always looking for partners in different verticals. So any just apply the thought process. Do you work for a company or own a company where you want to have safe AI? If the answer is yes, we have a system to solve this problem in a multitude of ways. And what we're really looking for in the early stage of where we are as a startup is thought partners, right? We don't want to just beta test and make you a product. We want thought strategic partners that we can evolve with over time. Because I will say, and Adam said this a couple of times in this podcast, and it's the one reason that when he reached back out to me after over a year hiatus of not hearing or seeing that beautiful smile, I said, whatever you want me to do, man, because family is always the first word out of his mind. And you're a beautiful human being, and you deeply care about people. And that's my vibe as well too. And what other type of people would you want running a safety governance AI company, right?
Thanks, man.
Of course, appreciate that. Okay, so let's do this. We are going to share the screen, and I'm gonna
Yep.
zoom in, and I just said, "Hey, act as my research analyst. Give me the top 10, the top 10 thing. Give me a top 10 list of things that have happened over the last week."
Yep.
We got the top 10 list. We got OpenAI locks in the timeline for its first hardware device. Safety disaster right there.
Uh-huh.
Apple AI. Apple is getting into the AI wearable market too. So theirs is coming out. Have you heard about this? The pin? Yeah, the
No.
pin concept. Yeah. AirTag sized wearable with cameras and microphones 2027. So OpenAI is going to beat them to the punch probably a half a year earlier. We've
Uh-huh.
we've got agentic AI frameworks hit mainstream enterprise adoption. As we saw, this is my thing. I mean, economic forum, people are really talking about like these agent systems really
Uh-huh.
which is my prediction, by the way. By the end of 2026, people that are worried about jobs, you will be worried about jobs because these agent systems will have started to do the work. I think we
Mm-hmm.
actually start seeing the true impact of AI by the end of this year because of number three. This one's
Yep.
interesting. Finance OS and AI agents for the CFO's office. So details raised a large Series C to make its first AI Finance OS. We need to talk to these people. Anybody watches this that knows Finance OS, they're probably not doing it as safe as Civitas can. So you probably need our help there. New AI red teaming and security testing tool. Here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Databricks introduced Black Ice, a containerized red teaming toolkit for AI security testing, signaling growing productization of AI safety, which we obviously are talking about, AI powered identity verification and anti fraud platforms. So, again, safety, anti fraud. Um, Vectra AI platform for defending against AI powered attacks. So, more fraud, cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Cerebras multi-billion-dollar compute build out. Cerebras to integrate its wafer scale system into OpenAI's inference stack for low latency, high. I mean, just bro, the compute these frontier labs are getting are out of control. This
Mm.
is interesting. Falcon H1RZB small model big reasoning leap. Technology Innovation Institute released benchmark data showing Falcon, a hybrid transformer Mamba model, outperforming much larger models like Quen logic and math, pushing small but money edge reasoning frontier, which I think is another thing we're going to see, right? Is
Yep.
smarter and smarter models with less and less parameters. You don't need trillion parameter models to be amazing. AI becomes essential jobs engine narrative at Davos. So AI primarily as a driver of jobs rather than a pure threat. That's interesting to me. Is that a little PR of like spend all this money on AI, even though we know for sure they're going to take jobs? Or do we really think it's going to make jobs? So we have anything from plethora of wearable devices to small models beating bigger models, AI agentic frameworks, where compute. What do you want to go with? What interests you the most about what I went through?
I think well, there's a couple there. Like I think the number nines is definitely of an interest, and then I think it was number 6 or 7.
So talk to me about number 9. For someone that has built this, I think a lot of people don't even understand this concept, right?
Yep.
So when you read something like this saying that these larger models like Quen are being built out by smaller models hitting these benchmarks, what does that even mean to the layman person?
It just again, and we touched on this I think offline or one of the other podcasts, or even when we actually had our thing. It's like it's efficiency, right? So you're a smaller lab, you got to be about efficiency. And so, but it's not just in the efficiency context. It's like I use the brain, right? So let's use our human brain, and we use between 10 to 15%, right, when we're computing things, right? But we've got this 100% of a brain, so the rest of it's sitting idle. Now, in the flow state stuff, you can say which parts you're using more of or less of, and stuff like that. And so the old sort of monolithic style is going, hey, I'm just going to use this whole 32B, thing, and it's going to, hit it. But then I'm using all these resources to do that, right? So what I throw all this compute. So the alternative is saying, hey, how do we run this light and lean? So like even part of the development with Civitas is like running that on a CPU and calling in GPU when we need to, right? Now that's been hotly contested, right? One of the reviewer feedback was like, oh, how is it even possible if you're just using CPU? Well, it's like, well, that's the point. If you're using a really powerful CPU unit, like 32 core CPU, and you're doing fractional marginal stuff, right? Then you don't need to pull on you pull on a GPU when it has to, sort of bring it in. So all of a sudden now you've got these smaller models that are a lot more optimized, and this comes back to that transformer. I have to look into the Mamba model. I have to admit I haven't looked at it,
Don't know what that is.
but again, it's a hybrid model. It's basically saying using a little bit of this and a little bit of that, right? So I could say it's using a thing called a MOE router, right? So it's basically it's picking the top FNKN weights, and this is something Civitas sort of excels at, and which we're building out to, is that it's picking the top parts of your brain, right? So like we know to say, okay, I'm going to use that 10-15% of my brain to answer this question or address that, right? And then I'll go and use another part of my brain and so forth, versus the alternative of I'll use the whole thing. And this is how they're able to beat that, because it's about an efficiency thing. And I think this is going to be huge, 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 huge frontier paths, right? So even the VL Jetlets that have been coming out, it's a 1.8 or 1.9B model, and it's crushing the rest. Again, it's being more efficient. So that's really what it's coming down to. And I think this is going to be huge, because the reality is these 1 terabyte and whatever it is, these big models,
Trillion.
They're just not sustainable. They're not. So imagine you're going to run over 1 trillion parameters, right, to come out with an answer. Now, it might be a really good answer, but how much energy have you burnt to do that? It's like, you're gobbling all these calories just to give an answer, where it's like, well,
it's very, as advanced as it is, it's kind of dumb, right? Like it's dumb in the way that we're built it, right? Which is the ironic part about it. So my question to you though is that why though? Is that why potentially this just goes so much? Is this one reason? I'm sure there's more, but where my head goes when you're talking through this is, well, then this makes sense as to why people just don't understand how quickly this is going to move, because we've already committed trillions of dollars to these data centers that can do trillion parameter models. And when it inherently, AI gets more efficient and we're able to get this productivity out of these small models, now we have these massive data centers that then can just smash all of this compute to a more efficient thing to make more beautiful, insane things that we never even thought about. Is that part of the reason as to why we're just going to see this insane exponential curve?
Yep. And it's like, I think someone, I think it was ex McKinsey or I don't know, one of the big firms anyway, said that the big thing's going to be where people are going to have their own AI systems, right? Individual AIs. They're only going to have their own individual AIs. So something like this, like a 7B or 5B, you can run that on your own computer, your own laptop, doing what you need it to do, right? And then all of a sudden now you apply multiple smaller agents that are super efficient in a swarm, right? And you put massive compute behind it, it's going to absolutely exponentially accelerate, because you've got huge intelligence, not huge compute. You've got huge intelligence, and you got huge compute powering huge intelligence. The growth rate's going to be absolutely exponential. But this is where the bigger labs, right, unless they adjust and move, which is a very big movement. This is you're basically saying, hey, you've got this 1 trillion parameter model. You need to break that up. You need to refractor that and break that up, which means, I have to go back to the beginning. And so this is the part where it's challenging. So these smaller models are becoming really, really important. And but yeah, like you speed up anything. It's like, okay, so a bike's still a bike, right? Put a motor on it. It's a motorbike. Electric bike, it's still doing the same. The inertia is still the same. It's still accelerating, but you've got acceleration power behind it.
Right.
It's getting faster. And so, yeah, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have these models that maybe take, let's say, a minute or 30 seconds to come over. You throw some serious weight behind it, all of a sudden, something like in point 0.1 of a second, it's coming up with that result. The result's still the same. It's
Yeah.
just going,
But
oh man,
not only is it that much faster, then it's also being able to be more complex and robust because you're smashing tons of compute into a smaller parameter. So even like it's not going to be AGI level like super in depth response, but within those confines, it's going to be more powerful as well too. The
yeah.
question uh, this question is interesting to me then. With that concept, what is your thought process on
Mm.
does does it mean that we don't need as much compute in the future, or we can never get enough compute and we'll always have we can use infinite compute because even with a model like this, we will find a way to use it is my question.
Well, that's a good question, right? It's like, I'll use the example, you know, if you're given a small space, right, you accommodate to that small space, right? Then all of a sudden you're given a bigger space. Eventually you're going to fill that space, right? So that's human nature to doing that. Now, so do we need more compute like that, infinite compute? Well, we know the problem there. We're limited by the technology, right, the chips, and then we're limited by the electricity, right? So we've still got that, we're still stymied there. So until we solve that problem, right, which is 10, 20 years away, probably more, realistically, right? To even getting close to that, like, okay, we're talking micro reactors and fusion reactors and stuff. We're still, they're too expensive and it's ways away before we even get to that efficiency. So, okay, so we've got an electricity problem there. So the ones that are actually focusing on building smaller models that are scalable and more efficient is going to accelerate the growth point where we won't need as much compute. And I think that's whether we accept it or not, the market's pulling that way, right? It's kind of like, hey, I really don't want to or can afford to go and spend, 15, 20 grand on a GPU, a Blackwell GPU. And oh shit, now I need 4 of them, right? So, okay, that's 50, that's 70 grand if I can get my hands on them. And
If
then I
you
need
can even get them, that black
yeah,
market, you're spending 200, huh?
exactly. And then you need to, exactly. And then I need the housing, I need the cooling, I need to cool it down, I need the power
Uh,
to run it. And all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, is this really efficient for me? Then all of a sudden, something comes along and it's like a smaller model, which I can run on my laptop or run on a little device, and it costs me a fraction of the thing, and it's doing exactly what I need it to do.
right.
And if I need more information, I can just go to a Claude or a Grok or anything else like that. I can get that extra little bit of crumb stuff if I want to,
Mhm.
or I go to Perplexity and get that information. It's kind of like, so you've got this hybrid sort of connecting space, and I think that's the real future because yeah, we need data centers and we need the power to power this stuff. But
Yeah. And and
but
and and but to your point, where the future becomes completely unfathomable to the human mind is when we solve compute and energy, and then now this stuff scales infinitely.
yeah, yep.
Like, what happens? I don't know. Like,
Ah,
that's
that's
Scotty beam me up. We're eviscerating and, we're doing telekinesis, we're doing the whole 9. Anything's possible at that point.
that's year million. There's a documentary sort of movie sort of document. It's called Year Million. I think it's Will Smith that narrated it. Can't remember, but anyway, I think it was National Geographic put it out. But it's called Year Million, and it's not the year 1 million. It's just year million. Like it's just the thing, and it's like that. So what will happen is I see that we are building smaller models, right? There'll be individually models, right? And at the same time, we're building out this massive compute, but we're going to solve that problem, the compute and electricity problem, right? So once we break through that, well, you're going to have these smaller models, and you can create this sort of hive and swarm thing, which potentially, yeah, blockchain, decentralized energy and systems like that are providing those things would potentially come into play, because all of a sudden you're going to have all this ridiculous unlimited sort of, not unlimited, but you're going to have this huge amounts of power. You're going to have all this compute, and you're going to already have these systems running, these models running on smaller compute. And then you bring them collectively together into this big, beautiful mind. Then we are teleport, beam me up, Scotty, sort of Star Trek stuff, because and then you bring in quantum computing as well, because when we solve the energy efficiency thing, you solve the problem that is the biggest hindrance right now to quantum computing, right? So quantum computing is quite cheap to run, right? It's cheaper to run than a GPU and its thing, but where it's expensive is you need to keep it cool, right? The freezing of it, keeping that constant temperature. So you're running, a super fridge, right? Freezer fridge, full time, right? And that is your expense. So your electricity is burnt on that, but the chip itself, it's like running it's cheaper than running your CPU on your laptop, sort of stuff.
Wild.
So it's crazy, right? So all of a sudden, like, okay, we've solved the electricity problem. All of a sudden now we can scale the shit out of quantum computing and keep it cool.
And now then multiple dimensions. I still read I gotta find this, like, paraphrasing. Don't quote me exactly, but it was something along the lines of, what is one? It's a qubit. Is what it called? A qubit, right?
Yeah, 1 qubit. Yeah.
And because you have this extra dimension, right? They were saying that 80 qubit quantum computer can store every atom in the universe.
Yep.
Like, wrap your head around that one. In the universe. Like, that is like when they said that, I was like, holy shit. Like, that. Now you're talking about things so exponentially beyond what the brain can comprehend.
Yep.
That your wildest, what's crazy is to think a world will exist where the wildest human dream is like laughable to the true potential of what's possible, right? Like, our wildest thoughts are just like a little joke into the true potential of what we could unlock. Wild.
Yep. It is wild, because all of a sudden now you've got, let's call it, all the atoms in the universe sitting inside an 80 qubit quantum computing that's running on super energy efficiency, because we figured out the energy efficiency parts, right? So all of a sudden you got that in there. Now you've got all these, little micro agents that are, energy efficient, smaller agents that are already optimized to use the current constraints of electricity. So all of a sudden they're scaling at that energy efficiency rate, right? And then all of a sudden, cost of energy has dropped exponentially, and it's become more energy efficient. So now you've got these intelligent models with like a bucket of all this knowledge, right, of atoms, so to speak, all this material. Now imagine what that marriage looks like, right? You've got ridiculous compute, you've got the all this material, and you've got all these genius brains out there sort of collective coming together, and then you've got a computer, a quantum computer, that can able to do that. I mean, the thing is huge. What does it look like in the future? I'm really excited to see, and it's really, really exciting. But I'll draw it all back, and I'll anchor it back to safety, right? Because if we don't put those rails in place now, all of a sudden we've gone way to the future.
Game over.
We've got something that's running so ridiculously insane, like that level, right? So much power, but it doesn't have any parametered boundaries, right? So if we train it with the parametered boundaries now, and we're scaling up to that point, it doesn't matter how intelligent, how smart it gets, it's still parametered bound to safety. And that's the part that it's fundamental. So it's exciting to see what the future looks, but those sort of come back to. But yeah, it's going to be a wild ride, and I think it's going to happen very fast. Meaning, we will solve the energy efficiency solution, right? So okay, right now they're saying space, cool. I don't see that as energy efficient in my opinion. I think there's too many sort of, problems to solve. We haven't figured out. We're not like sending, we're going to send an astronaut to space and they've got to, fix it and service it. And there's a lot going on, right? So we're
Right.
still ways away from that. We're probably, 10 years away to some sort of efficiency to where you've got to maintain and service them and that it's
Mhm.
cost efficient. Okay, cool. So, we're still here on Earth and coming out of efficiency, but we're solving that, right? And then once we've solved that, we're unlocking stuff. It's like, okay, we're limited really in quantum computing, okay, making bigger chips, but we're limited in keeping it cool, right? You
What do
keep
you
it
think?
cool all the time.
How long do you think till real quantum computing breakthroughs? Like a decade?
Yeah, maybe a decade. I think labs, top tier labs, like meaning government labs, I think government labs and Google and Microsoft and IBM have been working on this for 7 to 10 years, right? So they have been at this for a long time, right? I think they are probably 2 to 3 years away from some internal serious breakthroughs. We'll see some published papers really blow our heads off. 5 years will start to become a little bit more there, and then probably 7 years we'll start to see, commercial enterprise level, and then 10 years will be a lot more available, sort of mainstreaming, rolling out. Could be sooner, but I think 10 years is a good runway point. But
Was it a year or two ago when Google made that breakthrough of like, because one of the problems was trying to scale these things, they would inevitably like break and have errors, and they found how to fix that fundamental, I forget the term for it.
for the fault tolerance is inside. It's like you
Correct.
go to it starts to collapse in on itself,
Yes,
right?
and they've
Yeah,
solved that
yeah,
problem,
yep,
and
yep.
that was a pretty big deal.
It's
And then,
huge, huge.
and when they solved that problem, I remember because this isn't as deep in crypto. Everyone was like, "Crypto's dead. You're screwed. Game over." Right? Like they solved this one problem, and now everybody wallets are going to get hacked the next day, which is like not the reality. But there is, and this is that everyone's fear about crypto is like, well, yeah, quantum computing could hack to any crypto wallet now, but by the time we get there, we will have had a new solution. And what is that next evolution of it? Listen, man,
Yeah,
we picked that one thing to talk about, and I think that was plenty enough because my little
yeah,
man is about to wake up here soon. And I love doing this, dude. I love hour and 32 minutes this time. I also just realized that I can just quickly hit a mark clip button. So when you were saying interesting things, I was just pressing that button. So we're going to be able to cut this up real nice, real quickly. Uh, and this will be great for our little content agency whenever we get one too, to just be able to ship this off and be like, here are some recommended clips, go make magic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. No, look, it's been awesome. It's been exciting. It's been great, and I love chatting and sharing. And this is the magic part, And I think sharing the message, putting invitations out to these people, these guests that we want on the show to talk about, to understand, challenge, wrestle, and evolve. Because I think this is fundamental. But yeah, like you said earlier, at the core of it, I think the way you said the invitation, if you are a business or an organization or an enterprise or something, and you're looking for solutions to running safe AI in your system, we're open to helping to doing that. So it's like one of the things to sort of bring out is pilot labs, right? Working with sort of consultancy groups to sort of saying, here's the system, go and shape it in the image of your customers versus us saying here's off the shelf. And I think that's the part where we want to be malleable to providing safer solutions. And why? What is it about? It's providing the evolution of safety, AI safety, but that is suitable to your organization and it evolves with your organization. So you can put your head on your pillow at night and feel comfortable that, we're innovating and we're safe.
Mhm.
That's the magic. And that's what we're about. And so it's been beautiful, man. I love that we get to talk about this stuff and just be open about it and be real about it. It's really cool. It's beautiful.
Thanks, man. And it's I'm so excited about this year. I think there's so much possibility. And I think we were talking about this last night that like, I only had a couple of, Gianni was on vacation. Everybody's been, these crazy Europeans take vacation for 2 months on the holidays. It's like you never work. And, I've been grinding here for a while, but now we got everybody back. And I think in a very short amount of time, we're going to be able to get data, feedback, and then have using my connections, figure out other industries where this makes sense. And it's going to be fun. And I just love talking about this because I still don't. And I guess I get it because people get caught up in their day to day lives. And we know people like to feel safe and comfortable. And some people don't want to think about things. But it's mind blowing to me the amount of people I talk to that have no, they just aren't interested in what's going on in the world right now, and they don't understand the pure gravity of what's going on, and I just get excited waking up every day. One of the main things that drives me is podcasts like this and knowing that we have a product that can fundamentally help build the future the right way because we need more of
Yeah,
that, brother.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because this is what it's for our future. That's it. And you said it, you nailed it perfectly. It's beautiful, and it's just being raw and real. So that's the thing. That's the main part. I think that's true to us, and others too. It's like keep thinking about it. Work on all these solutions. These labs and stuff with the encouragement. It's like work on these solutions. Let's collaborate. Let's talk about stuff because if we do this collectively, we're going to be better for it as a society. To create some really cool solutions to utilize the technology for our advancement. As a society, we become smarter, we become better at it, but also we don't have to have the worry of is this thing going to breach beyond or anything else like that. So we
Yeah.
we can live in this beautiful society in a future society that we don't have to look at our mistakes 200 to 300 years time, look back at the mistakes that we made now.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we actually we saw that mistake, but we fixed that and we addressed that and we went down this path. And that's what we're advocating for. So yeah, it's beautiful.
With all that being said, people, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you watch this again, please reach out to either me or Adam on LinkedIn. I tag him all the time. And we can't wait to hear from you. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Mikey and Adam are out.